Hello lovely people, welcome to another episode of Book Chat, my weekly roundup of stuff I have read at some point in my past.
Sophie Vlogs.
I have 4 books to talk about this week. I'm going to try and be concise. Let's go for it. Starting with The House of Impossible Beauties by Cassara. This is a book that I picked up because I saw it on Cece at Problems of a Book Nerd's channel, and I'm really glad I did because I really enjoyed this. It took me a long time to read comparatively to my usual reading speed. This essentially follows people who are involved in the House of Extravaganza, which was a house that performed at drag balls, and is essentially based on real people but is a fictional book. And different sections of the narrative follow different characters in this. We go through a fair bit of time, and we sort of get insights into characters' backgrounds, as well as like where they are, what's going on, that sort of thing. I sort of knew what was going to happen to some of the characters in this. For example, if you've watched Paris is Burning, a number of people who are characters in this were featured in that documentary, especially one character who has a very sad ending, so I sort of was already aware of where certain plot points were going to go. I think one of the reasons why this took me longer to read is kind of because of that, because, you know, this is not necessarily always a happy story because it's taking place in a time when there's an AIDS epidemic going on, there is rampant homophobia and transphobia and that sort of thing. So just a word of warning that if you're expecting this to be like a jolly romp through the ball scene, it's very much not, because that's not what the reality was. So I felt like it did like an effective job of sort of capturing like what real lived experience would have been like during that time. It's just that real lived experience was sometimes quite hard to read about because, you know, you've got people struggling with AIDS, you've got people dealing with drug abuse, you've got general just like that navigating those relationships with your family which don't always go very well and stuff like that. So like, just I'm verbalizing that if those are things which might be triggering to you, then just go in with the knowledge. That said, I do think it was a really well done book. I think it's kind of weird reading it when it's like these people are characters but also you know they're real, but you know that this isn't a non-fiction book, it's a fiction book, so there will be liberties taken and that sort of thing. But I don't know if I'm making sense. I think what I'm saying is that, bearing in mind that this is a period upon which I have previously consumed media from, so I am familiar with figures who are in this, there was like this sort of weird meshing of like fiction and reality where I was sort of like, I knew things about people in this, but also reading them playing out was very sad. I think it was well done. I think it did do a good job of like capturing a moment in time in all of its like gritty realness, but showing you the highs as well as the lows. I feel like I need to go away and do some Wikipediaing just to establish like how much of it is factual and how much of it is like, you know, a fictional creation, because there are details I know about these figures, but I'm not sure how much of what's happening in here is like actually happened and how much is like we're taking artistic liberties because we're telling a tale. So that's something I need to do. But on the whole, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really great. It made me really sad. I had to take a while to read it because I was like, it's not a book I could speed through. I need to like take my time. I followed that up with a BookTube favourite, and I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. I read this because I am part of a book club at work, and this was my pick. We take it in turns to pick the book that we're reading, and I turned to BookTube and I was like, maybe BookTube can help me pick something, because I want to pick something that I haven't read before, but also I want to pick something that's hopefully going to be good. And then I was like, oh hey, remember that book that everyone lost their minds over? So I picked this, and just to feed back the group's response, it's been said that it's the best book we've read, so you haven't let me down, guys. This is about a woman called Monique who is invited to interview reclusive Hollywood star Evelyn Hugo, who wants to give like a tell-all interview all about her 7 husbands and her life in the Hollywood industry. One thing I loved about this is how much it captured that sort of like old Hollywood glamour thing. There are so many... Evelyn is such like a composite of women who existed in that time. You know, like the multiple husbands, there's Mary Elizabeth Taylor. There's a bunch of other Hollywood starlets of that time, and there are different threads of Evelyn which really seem to like tie in with those. I got very into this. I felt like the world building was so, like, I absolutely knew where we were, what time we were in, what everything felt like. I felt like, in contrast, occasionally flashing back to Monique jarred me a bit, because Evelyn's narration and Evelyn's world and everything felt so real that sometimes, because Monique is going through this phase of like transition and not knowing, finding herself and stuff, because she's just split up with her, I can't remember if it's her husband or fiance, I can't remember, I think it's her husband. So Monique, flashing back to Monique sometimes like really jumped me out of the moments I was in. But on the whole, this was a book where I felt like everyone in Evelyn's narration felt so real to me. These are people who, they have strengths, they have weaknesses, the flaws are like realistic flaws. It was all stuff that I could really, like, these main core of characters felt very real to me. I so enjoyed the love stories that ties this all together, and the way in which that sometimes you lose time with someone for stupid reasons which seem so important at the time, and then later you rue the day because you're just like, why, we could have had all this time, blah blah blah. I found it lovely. And it's all like, that's my word, lovely. I really enjoyed the reading of this. It was very emotional at times. Everyone in my book group wants to marry Harry. One of those like book group questions in the back, it was like, which of the husbands do you like the most? Everyone was like, Harry. So, you know, but it was really interesting to hear everyone in my book group's opinions on it as well, because a lot of people, essentially, like, some people were saying that it's not a genre that they really read, so it's not really their cup of tea genre-wise, but they all thought that it was really well done. And some people want to go away and read Daisy Jones and the Six because I told them about it. But essentially, a book club success, I would say. I've just realised that I actually have 5 books to talk about, because the other book I want to talk about is the next book club book, because I left it a while before I filmed this. So we also read The Interestings by Meg Wollitzer, and we've literally just done our book club chat about it. The Interestings is focused on a group of friends who all meet at this like summer camp when they're teenagers, and then it takes you like across like years of their life until, I think at their oldest they're about 50, 60, and we're constantly flashing between like different points in their lives. And the thing I struggled with The Interestings is the name comes from when they meet at camp, they're like, let's call ourselves The Interestings, blah blah blah. The thing is they're only interesting to each other. They're so wrapped up in each other. It took me a while to really get with this book that actually, like, they're not really the best people. I didn't like barely any of them, to be honest with you. There were like 2 people who I was like, you seem okay. Most of the people, especially our narrator Jules, one of the characters is constantly telling Jules that she's so charming and witty, but she's just not, or at least to me she's just not. And I think these things are deliberate. I think we're making this point about how wrapped up you can be in each other, and also like how as time goes on you can really romanticize as parts of your life and stuff like this, and then it's looking like what the realities of growing up is, what the realities of aging is, that sort of thing. Like, maybe your life doesn't follow the trajectory you thought it would when you were a teenager. And also like there's a whole thing I feel like in this about like dealing with trauma, because there's a central sort of thing that happens between 2 members of the group, which is very and it divides the group. Some people believe that this thing has happened, other people doubt, and like these people all have to deal with trauma, but there's another character who has trauma in their past which they haven't told anyone about, and they're dealing with it in a very different way. And so I felt like part of this was about like, how do you process these things? How do you build a life after these things? What are the choices you make? There's also very much an aspect of like privilege in this, because Jules is at the camp on a scholarship, but everyone else there comes from very rich backgrounds. And some of these things that happen, some people don't have to experience the repercussions because they have lots of money, which is sad, but also usually a reflection of reality and stuff. On the whole, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars because I did struggle with a lot of it. There was a lot of like the way the sexual things were described just felt very off-putting to me. At times she just describes things in needlessly off-putting ways. So yeah, I felt like it could have been a bit shorter. Like, one of the characters in it, Ethan, every time Jules talks about him, she's just talking about how ugly and repulsive he is, despite the fact that they have this amazing bond and they're so connected. She's physically repulsed by him. I was like, this is unnecessary, I don't need to keep going over this. So, like, to be honest with you, I was resistant to this book for about the first half of it, It was only towards the latter half when I sort of was like, okay, I don't like these people, let's just go with it, see what happens, because it's kind of one of those books that's about people living, and like not a lot really happens, and those are not always my best kind of books. I struggle with them a bit. Editing Sophie here. I appear to have lost a little chunk of footage, so I'm here to fill those gaps, and then the Sophie you've previously been watching will take over again in a minute. The footage I've lost is half of my discussion of How I Live Now by Meg Rosoff. How I Live Now tells the story of Daisy, I think, it's been a while, who is sent from America to go stay with her cousins in England. It's a stream of consciousness narrative, but it's framed as if the Daisy of the future is telling you about this time period, but she's telling you it in first-person stream of consciousness, so it feels very immediate. And essentially, there's an attack on the UK, and this sort of follows the confusion of that, what happens, Daisy and her cousins trying to get to grips and sort of, you know, that sort of thing. Stream of consciousness narration is never my favourite kind of narration, because I find it sometimes hard to connect with the characters in it. One thing I thought that this did really well with that is it's a really great vehicle for capturing the confusion. They know that there's been an attack. They know that stuff like their mother, who is in a different country, can't get to them. But other than that, you're really piecing together as the narrative goes on what exactly is happening. And it also does a really great way of showing you like the practicalities of, okay, so if electricity went down and like water purifying centres and stuff like that, how do you go about surviving? What are the practical things you need to make sure you have access to and stuff like that? And then also the way at which this war, or you know, the way at which this conflict has such brutal fallout for so many people who are so not connected to, you know, influence on power and stuff like that. I thought that was really good. The final one of my positives I wanted to say about it is I really liked the relationship between Daisy and her cousin, whose name I have forgotten by this point because it's been a while since I recorded this. But they had a very... Daisy really went into a big sister role with this girl, and they get separated from the boy cousins, and that bond between the two girls was really lovely, and I just really enjoyed that sort of dedication they had to each other and looking after each other and stuff like that. I thought that that was a lovely, strong bond. I had some niggles with this as well. And it's kind of impossible for me to say these niggles without giving away two things. It's not a very long book, it's very short, so I'm not sure how much this classifies as a spoiler. So if you don't want to know anything about it, maybe skip to the next book, if there is a next book in this wrap-up. I also can't remember that. But otherwise, two things. First of all, is the incest. Daisy arrives, and her cousin, I think he's called Edwin, and she's just like, oh, he's so cool. He's like 12, and he's smoking when he picks her up at the airport, and she's just like, oh, he's so cool. I'm like, someone needs to stop this child from getting lung cancer. And they have this like really strong connection. Essentially, they like fall in love, which I felt like you could have done this same story, but they don't have to actually be cousins. Shocking. Maybe he could be a neighbour. I don't know. I don't know why we had to be like, we're in love, we're 12, and we're cousins, but we're in love. Wasn't really into that whole plot line. Don't really understand why it was there. Didn't really add a lot. You could have had the same like devotion to family without being like, I want to fuck my cousin. That's just me. And then actually the thing that annoyed me more is that Daisy has like, I really hope her name is Daisy, but Daisy has like, and Edwin have like powers, like they're like psychic, they can like talk to each other in their brains, and it's never explained. No one else has this power. It's literally just like them, and I spent the whole book being like, maybe at some point we're gonna have an explanation. We're gonna have like, there's gonna be a backstory as to why they can do this. Never explained. And that annoyed me so much because it was such a convenient get out clause. It's just like, oh, you guys are separated and you don't know how to find each other. Oh, wait, no, you can just, like, you just talk to each other with your minds. And I was like, why? Why is this happening? It annoyed me so much. I don't think if it would have been addressed at any point, I would have been better with it. But it's just never addressed. You just have to accept it. And that really annoyed me. I didn't think it was a bad book. I just thought that these things really irked me. So, like, would I recommend it? I don't know. It depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for, like, this interesting narrative style, like my friend, I read it because the girl who I work with, it was really influential on her piece that she's been writing for her master's in writing for children. And when I was talking about it with her, it is all about this narrative style, this tone, this way of capturing this moment through, like, a child's eyes that are unreliable, and that you have to take everything they say with a pinch of salt and figure out, is everything you're being told correct? Like, she's writing this as if it's all happening, but we know from a certain point, she tells us that she's writing it after it's already happened. So this idea of immediacy is structured because this is not you're not just seeing it through her eyes, it's a account she has written after the event. So all this, like, unreliable narrator, stream of consciousness narration style stuff is interesting, but these whole things just really annoyed me. That's that. So, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. I would love to hear if you have any thoughts on any of these things. Otherwise, I will see you next time for something different. Have a lovely day.